This happened when I was just 8 years old. Although I was quite young, I can still remember it like it was just yesterday. It was back when we were still living in Bacoor, Cavite. Our house was small, but it was enough for my mom, my sister, and my cousin to live in comfortably. During weekdays, me and my sister, who was then 11 years old, sleep beside each other on the folding bed, while my mom and my 1-month-old cousin sleeps on the bed. During weekends, however, my cousin's mom, who works during weekdays, sleeps on the bed with my cousin and my sister, while I sleep beside my mom. We always position the folding bed a few feet away from the front door, and since the folding bed is not that wide, my mom sleeps in reverse of my position, so her head is much closer to the door than mine was, and I have a very clear view of the door. One weekend, while everyone was sleeping, I was awoken by a strange sound coming from outside walls of our house. It sounded like small rocks being thrown all around the house. It was not loud enough to wake everyone up, but it did wake me up. While I was wondering what or who could be doing that, I started hearing a different sound. It was a woman crying, but it sounded hauntingly beautiful, as if she was singing. For some reason, I knew that she was maybe a meter away from the door. Needless to say, I was creeped out. I clutched our blanket tightly, but my eyes were glued to the door. As if that wasn't scary enough, the crying was slowly getting louder, as if she was getting nearer. Then, she appeared in the front door. It did not open, but I was able to see her clearly. She had long, black hair and was wearing a white dress. Her feet did not touch the ground, but she was walking. And although her hair was not covering her face, I cannot see her face at all. It's as if there's a shadow hiding her face from me. And she was slowly getting closer and closer. I started to shake from terror, and I was trying to get my mother awake, and I was calling her, but she wouldn't budge. Tears were streaming from my eyes, but I can't look away for some reason. I was frozen in absolute terror. The woman was moving closer towards us, up until she was just a few inches from my mom's head. She stopped, but then she started leaning forward. I cried. I don't know if she was leaning forward towards my mother to possess her or if she was moving towards me. It was when she was just a couple of inches away from my mom's head when I finally lost it. I was shaking so hard that the whole bed was rattling, and I peed myself. It was only then that my mom woke up, since she felt the bed shaking. She shot straight up, furious at me for wetting the bed, but as soon as she spoke, the lady disappeared. My mom was so mad at me, but after seeing how horribly terrified I looked, she comforted me. I did not sleep anymore until the sun was up, and I was covering my head with the blanket the whole time. I don't know what that lady wanted, but after my encounter with her, I started seeing other entities. It's as if she opened my eyes to those things. This next encounter happened while I was still in college. I was living in my aunt's place inside the military camp. The house we were living in had 4 big rooms that were occupied by 4 different families. Each room was situated in every corner of the house and is connected by a rather large living room on one side and kitchen on the other. The two were separated by a divider you could see through at, and every family's refrigerator were in the kitchen. All four families were pretty close, since most of them have known each other for over a decade. Anyway, it was past midnight and I was just chilling in the living room alone, as I had done so many times before. All the lights were turned off, save for the perimeter lights outside. I was texting on my phone when I heard one of the doors open. No big deal, since some of them always go out to grab a glass of water late at night. I watched as their door opened and Krista stepped out. Well, she's a really close family friend and a big joker, so whenever she sees me in the living room late at night, she always talks to me for maybe a minute before going back inside. She started to walk towards the kitchen, so I called her name. She stopped walking, and her head slowly turned to face me. When she did, she had this sort of blank expression. She stared at me for what felt like ages before her expression changed. And from that blank, emotionless face, she began to smile widely, but her eyes remained blank. It was an unsettling smile, to say the least. She then started to walk again, but she never took her eyes off me, and her smile never faded. I watched as she went to the kitchen, and I waited for her to open the fridge, but she never did. I was absolutely scared, but I can't take my eyes away from the kitchen. From where I was sitting, I would have been able to see if she was in front of the fridge, but she wasn't there. She disappeared. I finally came to my senses and got the courage to run back to our room, into my bed, and covered myself up with a blanket. I never told Krista about it, but I told my mom. She said paranormal things do happen in that place. She even said that she has her own experiences there. From then on, I never stayed in the living room that late. Although I've always been able to see spirits ever since my encounter with the lady in white when I was 8 years old, I must admit that I have not and probably will never get used to seeing them. Mostly because I'm always caught by surprise and they always appear in places I would never expect them to. When I was 18, I had to live in my cousin's house for a while. He asked me to live there because his then wife, Kathy, had recently given birth, so he was wondering if I would stay there to help her with their newborn and their older kid. And since it was a C-section, Kathy had to take it easy for a couple of months until she heals. I was completely fine with it. In fact, I was looking forward to it because their older daughter is really sweet and well behaved. I wouldn't mind taking care of her for a while. Besides, they also have a house help who lives with them, so it wouldn't be that hard. My cousin's family lived in a nice neighborhood. They were one of the first few homeowners in that neighborhood, so at that time, they were the only one living in the whole street. So at night, it can get pretty quiet. The house had 2 stories. Downstairs, there was a small bedroom next to the dining room and the living room. The living room had 2 big windows, and each had a couch you can lay down on. When you look out the window, you'll see their garden and the street with a street light directly in front of the window. Upstairs, there were 2 rooms, one of which is occupied by my cousin's ex-wife and a baby. It was a nice place. My cousin's ex-wife was nice, and I really loved their kids. Needless to say, I was enjoying myself. At night, the house help, the older kid, and I would usually sleep in the living room because it was airy, while Kathy and the baby sleeps upstairs. My cousin works abroad, so he's not around most of the time anyway. I loved sleeping on the couch in front of the window because the wind felt nice at night, and it was long enough for me to sleep comfortably in, while the help and my niece would sleep in a futon below me. One night, after dinner and playing with my niece, we decided to go to bed. Kathy and the baby went upstairs, and the help laid the futon down for my niece and herself. I turned off the light and laid down on the couch. I drifted to sleep quickly. I don't know how long I've been asleep, but again, I suddenly woke up. I sat on the couch for a while and looked at my cousin and the help, who were still sleeping peacefully. I don't know what or why, but something made me look outside. So I slid the curtain aside and looked at the garden. Nothing. It was dark outside and I could barely see the street. Suddenly, the street light lit up. Well, it is motion activated, so I thought maybe it detected a cat. But I was dead wrong. Right below the street lamp, there stood a man wearing a barong, a traditional Filipino garment. He was facing the street so I could only see his back, and his head was bowed down. I knew instantly that something was not right. It was creepy as hell, but I kept on watching him because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't sleeping or making things up with my mind. It felt like ages, but he began moving. He was slowly turning around. And the way he was turning around was weird too, because his whole body was moving, but he was still standing very still. I watched him slowly turn until his whole body was facing me, with his head still bowed down. Then, without notice, he started to lift his head. I came to my senses and I closed the curtain, not wanting to see what he looks like. I laid down again and prayed, and I prayed hard. I thought to myself that maybe he felt that I could see him, and that's why he turned around. The rest of my stay there was pretty uneventful, thankfully, and I never saw him again. And I hope to never see him again.